This is Movies, a podcast by the act of cinema. With me today, of course, it's Hans. Were you just picking your nose?
No, just the top. I have a lot of blackheads that I'm dealing with right now.
How do you like to get rid of your blackheads, Hans?
I just squeeze them in front of the mirror until it hurts.
But do you use your fingernails? You don't use an extractor? You don't use some other device?
What, like those strips that just pull everything out?
The Korean strips, the Japanese strips. That's kind of effective, but it's not the most effective manner of pulling those blackheads out. But you know who my favorite dermatologist is? Is Detective Wolfman. Welcome back to the show. How do you like to remove your blackheads, Detective Wolfman?
Well, frankly, I haven't had a blackhead in a long time, but whenever I'm getting some kind of blemish, I usually get a Q-tip, rub a little alcohol on it to dry it out faster, and it sorts itself out.
That is a good method of doing that. See, I just use Neutrogena soap, which essentially the acid in that does that exact same thing. Although, I'm sorry, did you say you put rubbing alcohol on an open wound? That seems
I do
very
that too.
uncomfortable.
I was
well,
gonna
yeah.
say I pick it first. I squeeze the blood out first, and then I put some alcohol on it so it dries out.
But I'm talking about doing this without opening the wound. Just like if I'm getting a zit, I'll start rubbing alcohol on it because it speeds up the process, and like basically the oil and the dirt in the pore will harden, and and this is gross, but it'll basically just push itself out, and the whole process, it takes like 1/3 of the time than if you just let it sort itself out naturally.
Well, weren't you talking the episode of Viewing that we did about how you really like watching Dr. Pimple Popper videos?
Oh, well, I used to. I was way into it before, but now I don't really tune into it so much. But I don't mind it. I've grown desensitized to seeing lipomas cut open, and that's like a tumor under the skin that's usually yellow, and it's got a very jello sort of texture to it, and it doesn't quite pop open. But if you do pop it open, it looks like egg yolk inside.
Oh
Like
God.
a hard-boiled egg's egg yolk. It's pretty disgusting. It's pretty horrible. But I did have a year in my early teens, I think I was 13 years old, where I just had a lump on my nose for 6 or 7 months. And then finally, my mom was she couldn't bear the sight of me anymore. She said, we're cutting that thing open. And they cut it open, and it was just yellow pus that ran out. But
God.
man, it was such a relief to get rid of that lump on my nose. I felt
You had a tumor on your
disgusting.
nose?
I guess I did.
Just a cyst full of mayo.
It was not mayo. It looked like a runny egg Benedict. It was fucking disgusting. So tonight we're talking about werewolves. Teen Wolf would have been an appropriate film for this subject matter, I think. But I'll tell you what, I did watch Teen Wolf this year, and I said, what was all the fuss about? I don't understand what the hype about Teen Wolf is. What's the movie on everyone's tongue? Teen Wolf. I don't get it.
Oh, okay. I'm glad you brought this up, LowRes, because I was going to, because I've been going through the backlog of your guys' stuff, and yeah, just different episodes that I haven't listened to yet. And I heard, maybe it was a recent one, but I heard you mention you watched Teen Wolf and that you didn't like it. Now, I can understand not liking it, but you didn't find it to be a surprisingly good comedy?
No, I didn't.
Not at all. Wow.
I did not enjoy it at all. I was waiting for the fun to happen, and I did not have any fun at all. I probably would have had more fun finding an archive.org VHS upload of, what was it called? Soul Man, Soul Brother. What was the one with C. Thomas Howell? He should have been Teen Wolf.
That was
Then
Soul
that could have
Man.
been a blast.
Which one's Soul Man?
Soul Man is exactly like Teen Wolf, but it's affirmative action instead of a werewolf.
I thought you were talking about
It's blackface.
the Samuel L. Jackson Bernie Mac Soul Man movie. Where
It's
they
a title
sing
that's been
soul?
used a lot. There was a Dan Aykroyd short-lived sitcom where he played a priest called Soul Man as well.
Yeah, I remember that.
Oh, you're talking about this Soul Man.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yes.
They fully embraced it. They really leaned into that, huh?
Nice.
Yeah, boy.
Is that directed by Spike Lee?
Yeah, what a time to be alive.
Wow. I hope that was a big hit at the box office. I can't imagine any other film making C. Thomas Howell's career quite like Soul Man. That's insane.
It made 27 million in '86.
And it probably had a budget of like $1.2 million, I bet you.
And that's not that, but that's not factoring in all the young urban youths who snuck in without paying.
Right.
Finally, a relatable character on screen is what they've
Yeah,
been
right.
waiting
Finally,
for.
representation.
Damn, they give him an afro and everything. That's
You just saw him with a watermelon in a pimp outfit, and you're
he was wearing
surprised
a
by an
hat.
afro.
Yeah, when you wear a hat, you can disguise it a little bit better, I guess. So is it I know nothing about this movie. I think you might have mentioned it before because his face with that makeup looks very familiar. But what's the setup of the movie? Is he supposed to be a soul man to call it some way? Or is he someone wearing that makeup
No,
that gets found out?
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it all the way through. I just remember catching bits of it on TV back when I was a kid, back when they could still show it. But I think yeah, he's like a young guy trying to get into college,
Yeah.
and he can't because he's white. He's trying to get into like I don't know if it's an all black school or what, but yeah, but he basically fakes being black to get a better college education.
They could remake that now and keep it diversity forward by casting an Asian
Mhm.
as the C. Thomas Howell. You could get Simi Liu as Soul Man in there, and I think it would work just as well now as it did back in 1986.
Well, and you could spell it. You could spell it soul like South Korea,
Oh my God, this
so
is
it's
brilliant!
double entendre.
God damn, Detective Wolfman, that's the most brilliant idea we've heard on this show since giving Kenny a dating show. That's amazing.
Hey,
That's a great idea.
Look, man, I've been saying it for years. Like I should be. I mean, I guess you would call this a producer. I don't know, but like John Peters, that maniac, I could do that guy's job. I've got ideas for days.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, the movie we're talking about tonight is quite a fun film of the 1980s. And I do think it's actually one of the many, or not even many, it's definitely an overlooked Stephen King adaptation. Whenever people are talking about the best ones, they talk about The Shining, they talk about Misery, they talk about Stand By Me. But the adaptation of Cycle of the Werewolf is not one that frequently comes up in conversation, and I think it toes the line very well of being a fun horror movie and just a generally good 80s film, and especially for Corey Haim here and for Gary Busey. Gary Busey was past his prime probably at this point, or very close to that. Was this before or after the motorcycle accident that would render him brain damaged?
Well, before, because he could say a sentence, right?
Well, I'm pretty sure there were multiple motorcycle accidents. So this might be after one, but it's definitely it's before the coup de grace.
It was 88, the accident, where he died for 2 hours.
Okay, yeah, so this is before that.
Interesting. Okay, so I've seen Gary Busey on talk shows too following that accident. I believe I saw him on Johnny Carson talking about it, and he was very measured. He was very normal. So I don't know if it was just the accident that ruined him. I think it was a lot of damage from cocaine as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't help.
Well,
I'm
he
sure.
had a lot of like alcohol and coke problems in addition to and probably contributed to the motorcycle crashes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Busey, I think, is very underrated as an actor, especially early Busey.
Oh yeah.
The Buddy Holly story. I mean, he's great in so many films, and he was in Big Wednesday, the John Milius surfer flick as well. So, I mean, Gary Busey's
Straight Time.
Mm-hmm.
He shows up for a little bit in Thunderbolt and Lightfoot.
That's right. Yep.
But yeah, when in his youth, yeah, he had a lot of like really good roles, like really good like character supporting roles.
Also fantastic in Point Break.
Oh yeah.
So
Predator 2.
Yeah, he's
Really good villain in that.
got tons of hits under his belt. Celebrity Big Brother winner Gary Busey, the oldest Big Brother winner, I think, as well. Everyone hated him because he kept shitting, and they had to edit out him like grabbing women, And then the audience just saw everyone getting very annoyed with Gary Busey, and why? Because he's 75? No, it's because he's a retarded pervert, and he's disgusting. But then the audience was like, "We feel bad for this guy. Let's push him to the win," and he won. So he's a Renaissance man, this Gary Busey.
He's a soul man.
He's the soul man. That's right. Hans, is this your first time watching Silver Bullet?
Yes.
Wow.
But hold on. Are you guys familiar with Gary Busey, Pat Judge?
Pet
Gary Busey, pet
pet
judge?
judge.
Oh, wait, this
Yeah.
was his COVID show, right?
Of pet disputes. Those who want their cases tried by the best know there's only one man they can turn to, and he is thirsty for
Pet justice.
Why does it look like there's two different faces on his face? You see how this side is so much lower than the other side?
Because that's the side that got dragged across the pavement at 100 miles an hour.
Gary Busey's reality TV career is really something to admire. And he was one of the early ones to get in on reality television with I'm with Busey. It was a Comedy
with
Central
Busey.
show.
Yeah, I remember that.
He also did 2 Celebrity Apprentice stints, and those happened to be the 2 best seasons. And my favorite aspect of any time he was on Celebrity Apprentice was Donald Trump trying to justify why he would not fire Gary Busey that week. Because it would always come back to, well, wouldn't you say, he'd like address like Piers Morgan. Piers, wouldn't you say that Gary's kind of a genius in his own way? Wouldn't you agree that Gary's kind of a genius? And Piers would just be like, yeah, he's a unique individual. You know, everyone would just try to get around it while trying to get him fired because nobody wanted him on the team. I'm a big fan of Gary Busey. The man, the actor, the legend. He's great in everything, but he's especially great here, and he reminds me of so many uncles of mine
Dude,
in
exactly.
Silver Bullet.
Yeah, I was gonna say part of my love for this movie definitely stems from my childhood because it's one of those movies that was just always there. I don't remember the first time I saw it, but yeah, Uncle Red is like an insane composite of several of my uncles and an older cousin that I have. He's like some of my uncles in the sense that like I had a few uncles who, you know, were booze hounds and womanizers like Uncle Red. But in terms of just like the personality, like how jovial he is, how good he is with kids, like how much like spark and energy he has, he reminds me of an older cousin that I have who lived in another state, and he would always come home for Thanksgiving. And every time he came home, it was like it was an event, you know. And he was always really good with me and my older brother. I think he was like 10 years older than us. So he was like, even when he wasn't an adult, he was always an adult to us, you know. But yeah, it's just like such a blast to be around. And yeah, like a bigger, larger than life guy like Uncle Red.
Yeah, he reminds me of my uncle who was a crackhead and robbed drug dealers and dressed up as a cop and then would come around and give me Happy Meals or Egg McMuffins. And I'd be like, oh, wow, you're the best uncle ever, Uncle Dave. And that was my experience. Hans, we were just talking about on the last episode of B-Bang how you don't have any like alcoholic or crazy relatives in that way.
No, boring. Really boring. Just um conflict is more like family stuff, nothing like substance abuse or anything like that. Everyone's very normal, surprisingly. I was reading because I was looking into this movie after I saw it today, and apparently most of his lines were ad-libbed,
Oh, you can totally believe that.
Yeah.
100%.
which
It's
just
Gary.
makes it so much better because it's like he's so close to this character that that's why it seems so natural because he just came up with most of the lines that the character said.
You know what I just learned from researching this show is Don Coscarelli started directing this movie, which I had no idea. And I believe he's best known for Phantasm, the Phantasm series. I would not have garnered that at all from watching this, but it does make sense because I do think this is a very quality horror film, very eerie horror film at moments, and it rides the line of eerie and comedy so well, even though if the
Yeah.
comedy is reserved to Gary Busey. And the world building that takes place with I think the town's called Tarker's Mills.
Mhm.
They accomplish so much in letting you understand what that town is like within a short period of time. This is not that long of a movie, but you get a sense of what the type of person is that lives there, you know, the general town dynamics in place. And you also have a very good understanding of the family dynamic for Marty and Jane, who are the lead characters. Marty's played by Corey Haim, and he's a crippled boy, and Jane is his older sister.
Strongest crippled boy I've ever seen. He's got the strongest arms ever. He climbs out of his window, which is in the second floor, and he just uses his arms to get to the first floor so he can get on his bike, I think it was, like a little monkey. That was very impressive.
He gets in his motorized wheelchair,
Oh, right, yeah.
the silver bullet.
Yeah, he didn't get the bike yet. I think it was early in the movie. And then also, there's a couple of scenes where they just find him climbing trees and his wheelchair is below him. It's just like, what is this monkey boy here with the strongest arms I've seen in a 10-year-old?
Wolfman, when did you discover Silver Bullet?
Well, like I said, it's one of those movies that was just kind of always there. I just remember watching it very young. I don't really remember the first time. But I remember, I think it was one of those movies. Maybe I feel like maybe my parents didn't want me to watch it because most of my memories watching it were at my aunt's house, and she was very lenient about the movies we could watch. But yeah, it was just always there and definitely informative in my life and personality. And it was one of the few movies as a kid, because I always loved monster movies, but this is one of the few even horror movies that actually scared me when I was little. And I could never put my finger on it until I became an adult. One of the main reasons is because the insides of all the homes looked like the insides of all the homes that I grew up in. Like my home, all my aunts and uncles and cousins, they all, because I was born in 85, and nobody in my family had anything new. So I grew up around a lot of like 70s furniture and appliances. And like all the houses had that brown wood paneling. They had like deer heads on the wall. They had those like two-piece lamps where it's like two round parts, one on the bottom and one on the top with like the flower art on them. It was, yeah, just all the interiors look so familiar, but also the exteriors. This was shot in North Carolina, and I don't live in North Carolina, but I guess there's like similar flora, because a lot of movies you watch and there's like a forest, and it's clearly just like a California forest that's very well manicured. There's lots of space between the trees and all that, but like the trees and the bushes and the way the neighborhoods are all very wooded, it looks a lot like where I grew up. And so it felt like this could happen where I lived.
Yeah, I think my first experience watching Silver Bullet was probably on one of these basic cable channels whenever they're doing a Halloween marathon. I don't think it was AMC. I feel like maybe I had watched it in the mid '90s, possibly rented it from a video store. Because when I was a boy and when I was given permission to watch scary movies, whenever I would go to Blockbuster, I would rent 3 or 4 horror movies at a time, and maybe this was one of them. It was very early on though that I was exposed to this film, and I had also. Did you happen to read the novella by any chance, Wolfman?
Oh yeah, I've got it.
You've got it. What did you make of the novella? Because I revisited it today. It's very short, and I think it mostly does stick to what takes place in the movie. They're pretty well aligned, but I think the movie actually handles everything with the story much better than the book.
Oh yeah. I mean the book there's really, I mean the story in the book is very thin because each chapter is a different month and it's from the POV of a different victim. And so there's not a lot of through line. Like the Marty character, I think he shows up in 2 chapters. I think he shows up like in the 4th of July and then at the end. And his only significance is that he's like the one character that survives the werewolf and kills him at the end. But I mean, the book itself is, I mean, it's cool. It's a fun read. It's very quick. The art by Bernie Wrightson, the illustrations are incredible. It's some of my favorite artwork still to this day.
That's great.
But yeah, like the movie is a great adaptation. It adds a lot more. Like the Uncle Red character is basically an invention of Gary Busey. Like what's on the page of him in the book is just that he's Marty's like cool uncle. You know, you don't really get a sense of his personality. But one thing that I like about it is in the opening chapter where they basically introduce the werewolf. I like the sense of like fate and nature that comes with it. And if you don't mind, I'd just like to read a little bit.
By all means.
It's page 14 in the first chapter. It says, this is after he's killed Arnie Westrom. It says, something inhuman has come to Tarker's Mills, as unseen as the full moon riding the night sky high above. It is the werewolf, and there is no more reason for its coming now than there would be for the arrival of cancer, or a psychotic with murder on his mind, or a killer tornado. Its time is now, its place is here, in this little Maine town where baked bean church suppers are a weekly event, where small boys and girls still bring apples to their teachers, where the nature outings of the Senior Citizens Club are religiously reported in the weekly paper. Next week, there will be news of a darker variety. Outside, blah, blah, blah. But basically, it ends, the cycle of the werewolf has begun. And I love how there's no explanation of how the werewolf became the werewolf. You don't get an origin story because none of that matters. What matters is the immediate threat of this thing.
You're right. They never delve into the traditional werewolf lore or any sort of explanation. It just is. It's just you have to accept it on its face. This is a werewolf, especially with Silver Bullet. This is a werewolf movie, period, end of story. And Hans here, if you're in the $5 tier on patreon.com/LowRes, or maybe I'm feeling generous and upload this to YouTube, is pulling up some illustrations.
Yes.
Yeah, so Hans, do you want to just give a verbal illustration of what is on the screen here for our audio listeners?
So big chunky werewolf has a cook in a diner by the throat. I really like this one though, the one where he's ripping the face of a cop inside of the cop car. But yeah, it seems like for each month they did an illustration, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, each full moon.
Yeah, it's really cool.
That's very ACAB of you, Hans. That's exactly what I would expect.
I think it's the most violent one though, or the most graphic one. Well, that's not.
It's pretty gruesome.
Yeah, there was something there that's not for.
What a big red dog dick. Is that what you're looking for? Is that what you're browsing through these for, Hans? Hans, what did you think of this movie compared to a lot of Stephen King movies? Obviously, we talk about his filmography quite a lot on this show. I just did Jack the Perfume Nationalist show where we talked about 3 variations of The Shining and Doctor Sleep. So, I mean, half of that is just straight up turds. And
I
also,
think we should. Yeah, go on.
No, go ahead.
I think we should do I kind of want to rewatch that. Not because I think I'll like it this time, but just because the version that I watched was very not the greatest quality. Not that it needs it, but I think maybe we should revisit it. I just want to make you watch it again.
Maybe that's episode 300.
Yeah, we're just watching Doctor.
This is $2.99. Wolfman, you came so close to episode 300 here.
Oh wow! I don't know if I should be honored or feel slighted.
Well, you're more than if we do Doctor Sleep, you're more than welcome to hop in for Doctor Sleep.
Yeah, hell yeah, I haven't seen it, but I'll watch it.
All right, all right, then that's that. We gave away the next episode here. It's gonna be Doctor Sleep. Man, there's 2 versions of Doctor Sleep. There's Doctor Sleep, the theatrical cut, and then there's Doctor Sleep, the director's cut. And I bought the Blu-ray because it was like a Black Friday Thanksgiving sale. Amazon will often sell their Blu-rays for about $5, $6. I go, all right, maybe if I buy it, I'll force myself to like it. And that didn't work. No, I still just saw it as a total piece of shit. And I found all of the points of the movie that were most egregious to me were just as egregious, if not more so, on this go-around. There's certain things about it that I like. I like the premise of Doctor Sleep, but it's not good, and it's not for me. I don't like Mike Flanagan.
It's such a shame because I remember when I was younger, I guess like a young teen, and I was getting into like I'd always liked movies, but I was getting into like film appreciation, and I was starting to watch like independent movies, and I was becoming like a movie guy. Uh, and I remember like watching Train Spotting because that was the indie movie, that was the edgy shit that I could get a hold of, and I was the hugest fan of Ewan McGregor for a really long time, and that poor bastard, pretty much since Star Wars, like I don't really think has made anything great. I feel like he's basically just been wasted ever since then.
I think that's a pretty accurate description of how his career has gone. The only thing that sticks out to me as being good is probably the Train Spotting sequel that
I
he
still
did.
haven't seen that.
It's solid. It feels very 2016, which I think weirdly kind of works for what that movie is, and not even necessarily in a political way. 2016, although there's a touch of that, and hardly a touch of that, but it's in there. But I was reading Irvine Welsh's fourth Train Spotting book, which is called Dead Man's Pants, Dead Man's Trousers.
Shit,
Excuse me.
I didn't even know there was a third.
Yeah, he did a book called Skag Boys in 2012. It's a prequel to Train Spotting, and it takes place in the 1980s. And I didn't think that one was particularly good. I did think his immediate sequel to it, Porno, was solid. And Train Spotting 2 takes quite a good chunk of that book, but then they do their own thing with it. And now he's just kind of wacky as a writer. Like Begbie is Dexter, essentially. Like he moved to Los Angeles and assumed a new identity, and he's got a wife, and he's an artist. And it's just like, just make a new character. Don't transform that character beyond any sort of believability. Just do something different here.
Yeah.
But I was reading his last Train Spotting book here, and it has a lot of that vibe of 2016, 2017 to it. It was published in 2018, and it embraces that moment the same way that the movie does. And I think it I don't know, there's just something about it that fits, that works in continuity with that. But as far as Ewan McGregor goes, yeah, he's very hot and cold. Fargo season 3, I couldn't really finish that for a number of different reasons, when he certainly didn't help there. With Dr. Sleep, I didn't mind his casting as Danny Torrance, as the adult Danny Torrance, but he fucking ate it. He sucked. I mean, he what has he done that's been actually exceptional, that's been good?
I was looking at his IMDb. He's in Black Hawk Down, but I don't remember him in that. I don't know how big his role was.
See,
That's one.
he was fine in that, but that's like they basically, after other than Star Wars, like every other movie he's been in since then, he's playing an American, and he has
Yeah.
a terrible American accent. Like they won't let him use his normal voice anymore.
Yeah,
I don't
doesn't
know.
he have like a bad Southern accent in Big Fish?
Oh yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
See, I guess that's like I don't particularly love him in that movie. I think, I mean, if you're into like whimsical shit, I think that's like a decent blip on his and Tim Burton's career. Like a little uptick in what they were doing. But yeah, I haven't seen that in a long time. I might hate it now.
Yeah, everything else is at least on IMDb under 7, which is not a proof of quality, but nothing that I see here recognizes like decent.
Well,
The Island.
I pulled up the list here, and we've got films like Mordecai and A Million Ways to Die in the West.
Ugh.
So his standards lowered immediately as soon as he started doing American films. I forgot he had done I Love You, Philip Morris, which was the gay prison escape comedy with Jim Carrey. Did either of you see that?
No.
No.
That was, I don't even know how to really talk about that one. Moulin Rouge, there you go. That was his last good film, Moulin Rouge, 29 years ago.
God.
So he's horrible. He should just retire at this point.
Well, what is he even playing now? Just older, the same character, but older?
He played Obi-Wan again in that fucking show.
Oh, God,
That's
that
right.
was
Yep.
so bad.
Well, he was Jiminy Cricket in Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. That was good. That's Criterion worthy. Oh, Birds of Prey. Jesus Christ, I forgot he was in Birds of, and he was the bad guy.
The
in
bad
that
guy,
movie.
yeah.
it's a very sad trajectory he has gone down. But
Well, is it though? Because if you look at his filmography, you have Train Spotting.
Well, I mean, is this a scenario? Because I don't know anything about Ewan McGregor, but is this a scenario where he's like big in theater and that's like his passion, and he just does this shit to pay for his life? Because if that's the case, then good for him. But if this is all the acting he's doing, I know he's got to feel like, uh, I'm sure he must yearn for like the artist experience.
I don't think so. I think this is it. I haven't seen anything with him, pop up on Broadway or anything. I think he's living a very cozy life out in Los Angeles, and he had some excitement cheating on his wife with Mary Elizabeth Winstead and getting her to dump Riley Stearns, who is a decent director. He directed a pretty funny movie called The Art of Self-Defense.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was actually a response to her like his coping mechanism for being cheated on,
Oh wow.
being dumped for Ewan McGregor. But yeah, no, and I don't even think that worked out. I think they broke up already. So no, I think this is it for him. I think he's just stuck. He's stuck as a handsome older guy, but he doesn't have a whole lot of range, or they at least don't give him something with bite to it. The most interesting thing he's probably done from this list, and I haven't even seen it, is Halston. I watched maybe 2 episodes of that, and it was okay. It wasn't really for me. Jack said it's horrible, and he's horrible in it. I'm one to trust Jack's opinion on that. So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of the fate he deserves though for taking such generic shit.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's that.
Yeah.
I guess at a certain point, those guys. I mean, even a lot of guys that you think are like bigger, they still kind of just have to take what comes in the mail. Like.
I mean, what's the alternative here? Is maybe you're Robert Carlyle and you're living in England and you just have to take every single BBC procedural that's offered to you.
Yeah, that's honestly a worse fate.
I think so too. There's really, for as bad as everything is that comes out of Hollywood, that they throw these guys, these Ewan McGregor types, the procedurals in England are some of the worst entertainment on the planet. Like it is just like the most void of creativity. I watched, and on the note of Irvine Welsh, I watched his miniseries Crime, which was based on one of his books. I read the book in the 90s, and his writing is just so full of character, and they're all disgusting, dirty people throughout any book. And I would recommend a movie called Filth with James McAvoy.
I've seen that.
What'd you think of Filth?
I enjoyed it. I'd never read that book. I'd only read Trainspotting and Glue. But I mean, yeah, it was I enjoyed the movie, but I felt gross watching it. Like I felt like scum. Like I definitely felt like I needed a shower when it was over.
And that movie, I don't know if you could do that movie now with how sensitive everybody is to the trans and cross-dressing thing, and that being like a twisted little like kink to that lead character and a big reveal of the movie. But I think that movie did a good job of distancing itself from any sort of train spotting aesthetic while also drawing from Irvine Welsh's writing. So with Crime, they released this on like Channel 4, one of their big networks in the UK, and I signed up for BritBox just to watch it for a month. And it was literally every single UK sitcom is shot with I couldn't even tell you what camera. It's probably just an ARRI Alexa, but they make it look like the most standard basic DSLR shit. It's white walls, it's very plain dialogue that's fake edgy. Like the racist guy on the show says person of color. It's just like, come on.
Like a real racist.
Yeah. And it's just so bad. And like everyone is, I think it's just the lack of quality with the writing as well, because the lead guy is this actor, Dougray Scott, who's decent, but the writing is horrible. And so like his performance is marred by that, and everything he's saying sounds so stupid, even if he's conveying a great deal of emotion that reads as believable. And the other thing too that really gets on my nerves, if you're doing a crime procedural where somebody is dead, is when a person dies, their jaw drops. They unhinge their jaw. You don't die with your fucking like that, you know?
Yeah.
And this show couldn't even get that right. And as soon as a piece of media has a dead person with their mouth closed, I'm like, I'm out on this. This is bullshit. This is fucking fake. So it was not a very good series, and I guess they're continuing it for series 2.
Well, it's a lot of just trying to be gritty coming from someone that didn't live that life or has any experience in that life, right? Or isn't created enough to make something that's creatively interesting or believable. So instead, you're left with characters acting tough, but nothing that comes out of their mouth seems tough, and their actions are just kind of um, CSI tough, I guess, where it's very safe, but it's shot in a very gritty and British, and it's in London. It's like okay, we understand that the setting is London. London hasn't really been scary for like 30 years, so they lean too much on that instead of coming up with characters that actually do ruthless stuff and like criminals that you would be afraid of. And instead, they're just very verbal instead of with actions, but they also can't be offensive. So then it's just like a very stoic look and acting tough. But then, like you said, say person of color. So then that takes away from any type of threat that you might feel from the character. And at the end, this is just a fancy British man acting tough. It doesn't feel real or believable.
Did you guys ever watch Ripper Street?
No, that sounds familiar to me,
No.
though.
It started out as a BBC show, and then Amazon bought it and finished it. But it was on Netflix for a while. But it's a police procedural, but it's in Victorian England in Whitechapel, and it takes place after the Jack the Ripper killings have gone cold, and it's clear that like H Division in Whitechapel is not going to solve that murder, and it's basically like the further cases of that police division. I really liked it. It's got it definitely has some episodes that are very like eye-rollingly progressive because I mean it's England, but even with that, I think the show overall is a lot of fun. But it's got that British actor. His name escapes me right now, but he's on the Succession show.
Matthew McFadden.
Yeah, Matthew McFadden. He's the main guy. Yeah, it's got Jerome Flynn, the guy who played Bronn in Game of Thrones. He's in it.
The guy from Harry Potter's in it.
Oh, like half the cast of Game of Thrones shows up in the over the course of the series.
Robin Hood from the BBC, Robin Hood that I mentioned in the last episode, isn't it?
Wow, Robin Hood, the Robin Hood, amazing. So this is a recommend. Wolfman.
Yeah, I really dug it, especially if you like that era. If you don't like Victorian England, then it's probably not for you. I really enjoyed it. I will say, like the first season is just very case of the week. By season 2, they start getting into like plot, like season arcs and shit like that. But I dug it. It definitely has its flaws. It's not a perfect show, but it's like, it's Kino.
Oh yeah, that's Tom. What's his name from Succession? Wamungsgamsen, something like that.
Swamscrums. Yeah, yeah. He has a great character arc on that show. He was my favorite by the end of it. He's fantastic. So it's only a matter of time before Silver Bullet gets a remake. I'm thinking.
I was thinking that today.
It's kind of shocking they haven't thought to go back to it just yet, but it doesn't stick out as one of the most popular. Pet Sematary maybe clouds over it a bit in that regard, and we're now out of the whole Stephen King era part 2, part 3 maybe. Yeah. I mean, for films anyway, this is definitely like the second run. I think the first run was the 1980s where you get The Shining, you get Firestarter, Cat's Eye,
Mhm.
everything. You get everything in that decade. And then the first installment of it that Andy Muschietti directed kicked off another run where you got a new adaptation of Pet Cemetery and Firestar, basically everything I just said a second ago. And then the 90s, it's all not really horror. You get TV. You will get TV miniseries that are based on the Stephen King books. And then the big screen seems to be reserved for the more serious, even keeled, well measured adult drama
Yeah.
Stephen King properties like Dolores Claiborne and The Green Mile, Shawshank
Shawshank,
Redemption. Yeah.
Hearts in Atlantis,
Mm-hmm.
all that stuff. Yeah, I think two reasons why Silver Bullet hasn't gotten a remake. One, because the novella is so sparse, like the writers are gonna have to do more work to come up with a script. They can't just, like all these other Stephen King books that are like 600 pages, they can't just cut the fat out. They're gonna have to make more from scratch. But also, for whatever reason, and I have my theories, uh, werewolf movies are just not very popular.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
people don't go out for werewolf movies. I don't understand. Well, I understand why the vampire is more popular than the werewolf, because a vampire is a character in itself. Like, the vampire is sentient. You've got more versatility. You can do a movie where the vampire is the character, you can explore what that's like, and he can have a personality. Or you can go where the vampire is just the threat, But even then, they're like a character in the movie. They talk, they have motivations, all that shit.
And
With the
you have the fact that they're also slick, right? And the sexuality of it, and like the whole, being able to control you with
Yeah.
their whatever look or whatever and all that.
Yeah, the vampire's sexier if that's your type,
Right.
ladies. But with the werewolf, even if so, there's two types of werewolf movies. There's the werewolf as protagonist and the werewolf as antagonist. Werewolf as protagonist. The problem with those movies is they're all basically just remakes of the Wolfman. It's a very formulaic plot. You have main character who's pretty generic, who you wouldn't be interested in if they weren't about to become a werewolf. They get bitten. They have a couple days where it's like, oh, I feel really good. Oh, I'm standing up for myself. All that shit. Then the first full
The
moon
Spider-Man effect.
Yeah, basically. The first full moon happens. They wolf out. Then they're in the aftermath. They realize what they've done, what they are. They consider killing themselves. They don't. They wolf out again. Someone close to them kills them. The end. And that's been done to death. We don't need to see it anymore. And then you have, like Silver Bullet, you have the werewolf as the antagonist. The werewolf is the werewolf is the problem and is the thing that is out there coming after you. And I think that's more effective. I think that's in a lot of ways easier to write and make interesting. But I've noticed, especially in recent years, people, and this is a lot of horror in general, but with werewolves, no one will take the subject matter seriously. It has to be a comedy. It has to be tongue in cheek. Even American Werewolf in London is a comedy, as much as the werewolf parts are great in it. But like The Wolf of Snow Hollow, this new like Hulu movie, like The Werewolf Within, that I haven't seen, but yeah, it just looks like a fucking shitty comedy with a werewolf in it.
The Wolf of Snow Hollow was such a disappointment for me because I really enjoy Jim Cummings as an actor and director.
Mm-hmm.
And I dug the whole, okay, it's winter time and we're investigating a potential werewolf.
Mm-hmm.
And I was on board for that. And the undoing of that in the last 20 minutes didn't stick the landing for me. And it soured me to the rest of the movie, which I was generally going with. And I like the fact that they cast Jimmy Tatro in that movie. I think Jimmy Tatro is a very underrated comedic talent. But yeah, no, that was not one that left me feeling content as a viewer.
Well, I was going to say exactly that I think the last big budget Wolfman movie that came out was that bomb with Benicio del Toro and Anthony Hopkins, right? That lost a bunch of money.
The
Uh,
Wolfman, which has a great looking Wolfman in that
Yeah.
movie.
It's such a waste. And I mean, like that movie was in like production hell for so long. By the time it came out, like you knew it was gonna suck.
Yeah. And
Um,
wasn't that part of that new Universal Monster Universe that died horribly? Was that
No,
not part of it?
here's what happened. They did that movie first.
All right.
And then many years after, they tried it again with the Mummy. No. Here's really the order of it. They did the Wolfman, and that Wolfman is like a cool modern upgrade of the Lon Chaney Wolfman of the 40s. The movie itself is kind of hit and miss, I think, but the design there is fantastic. Flopped. Total flop. What was that? 2009, 2011,
2010.
2010.
yeah.
Yeah.
2015 or 2014, they do Dracula Untold with Luke Evans. And that is supposed to be like a soft start of the dark universe. That was also a big flop. No one cared about that because, what is Untold here? It's a bunch of made up shit that was never in Bram Stoker's book. Nobody cares about that.
Was
And
they
I
gonna
think
try
it's
to make him like Vlad the Impaler type of
Yeah.
character, where he was
probably,
like
yeah.
old
Well,
warrior?
from the trailer that I saw, is it basically looked like yeah, it was like Vlad the Impaler, the biopic, but we're gonna make him a real vampire and he's a hero.
Right.
Well, that's
Yeah.
that's the big thing they love to do with these movies is let's not treat them as a villain.
Yeah.
Let's turn them into a superhero, and then we have a shared universe, and it's Marvel Pictures. So they tried that, failed. Then they go, you know what? Let's reach deep into our pockets and pull out some heavy wads of cash. We're going to get Tom Cruise, and it's going to be The Mummy. And they couldn't even get that right. They said, all right, we're going to do a sexy mummy, and it's going to be an action film. Okay, another flop. Another big flop. And I don't even think they had a Wolfman involved in that lineup. They had Russell Crowe as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. They had Johnny Depp as the Invisible Man. And I think they had one other person in the mix in that photo shoot as well.
It was Javier Bardem. He was gonna be, I think, Jekyll and Hyde, maybe.
So
No,
the
that was
Invisible
Russell
Man.
Crowe.
That was Russell Crowe, and he was in the Mummy movie.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. No, Javier Bardem. I guess he was gonna be.
What's in the
Was-
Invisible Man?
Was he gonna be the wolf? No,
oh,
no.
no, that was Johnny Depp.
Was he gonna be the Wolfman? Or
Back to back Latin Wolfman? I don't
Fan-
know.
Phantom of the Opera, maybe. I don't know, but
Ooh.
I know he was in it. But I don't remember who.
Let's
Frankenstein monster,
Oh, okay.
which makes sense because he's got a big head.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
so
you
that, I
can-
could see that. Yeah.
Yeah, I
can
guess he
picture
could be
that.
Frankenstein. But well, and then there was talk about there's still whispers going around about the Ryan Gosling Wolfman movie, which
Oh,
finally
yes.
he would literally be me.
That's
we'll
right.
See we'll see if that
I'm
ever happens.
very looking forward to that if it does happen because not just is it Ryan Gosling as the lead, you have Derek Cianfrance
Yes.
directing that, and that's a very serious, real director there. That's almost too good of a director to be doing potentially Universal schlock,
Yeah.
So I would be very interested to see that. Derek Cianfrance did some of the best films to come out of the last 20 years. He did Blue Valentine, Place
Yeah,
Beyond the
Place Beyond
Pines.
the Pines.
His HBO show, I Know This Much Is True, is fantastic. And I cannot stomach Mark Ruffalo, let alone two Mark Ruffalos. But that show was so great and one of the best pieces of cinematic entertainment to come out of the COVID era. So I would recommend that show to anybody. And
Okay.
the thought of him doing a big commercial Wolfman movie seems insane. But
Well,
I'm all for it.
I don't know if it was meant to be. I don't know if it's meant to be like a huge blockbuster or if they were trying to do like more of like an A24 style, kind of like that Invisible Man with the chick from Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah.
God,
I don't know if they were going for that angle. I mean, I feel like that guy's directorial style is more suited toward that. Like a more intimate psychological kind of movie. I think that would be better.
Well, that
'Cause
Invisible
it's-
Man movie was supposed to kick off their newest attempt. It was going to
Yeah.
be a more low key, pass it, trying to pull off this dark universe again. And that one seemed to take with audiences. That one seemed to be critically well received. I don't think we ever covered it on this show, but we definitely talked about it. I feel like neither one of us enjoyed that movie, did we, Hans? The Elizabeth
Which one?
Moss.
Sorry. Oh, yeah, we
yeah,
did.
Blumhouse, I think it was.
I hated that movie, but it was stupid. But it was so stupid.
Which sucks. I think The Invisible Man, the movie itself, is probably my favorite of the Universal monsters. I really like the concept of it's essentially the lodger. I don't know if either of you ever saw the Alfred Hitchcock 1920 silent film The Lodger, but it plays out like that, but with the Invisible Man. And I always liked that concept. I always liked how low stakes and small and like gossipy that movie was. And they always try to up the ante, whether it's Hollow Man or That Invisible Man or what. And I don't know. I think keeping it simple and weird and mysterious is definitely more the way to go. It kind of reminds me of Wreck, the first zombie movie in that series in Spain, where you just have someone living in the attic doing experiments. Like, you can handle it like that. I think it would play very well and very creepy.
Before they went all in with religion in that series, that ended up just turning.
That was goofy. Yeah, that was a little goofy. Look, I enjoyed the whole Catholicism and possession, and hey, it's not just zombies, it's demons. That, I think, sets it apart in the first movie. But then in the second movie, when it's full on a religious war, basically, you lost me. You didn't need to continue going on in the building with the same characters. You don't need to do that. That's always the big mistake, is we don't need to follow the characters. Just take the concept and apply it somewhere else. But that's neither here nor there.
They made 4, I think, right? And then in the States, they remade it with Quarantine. With the Dexter sister. And what was there at Quarantine 2?
And it was direct to video, and it took place on an airplane.
Nice. So zombies in an airplane?
Yeah, that's not the worst concept, but like give it a budget at least. It looked very, we rented this warehouse out and put in some airplanes. It's like when you see those reenactment videos of a black guy slapping a white woman because she's not wearing a mask or something, and then they turn to the camera at the end of the video and was like, this was a reenactment. But please sound off in the comments. Tell us who was right and who was wrong.
They use those influencer sets that they rent so they can take pictures in a plane, but it's not a plane. It's just a hollowed out set.
Yeah, the seats don't look quite right. There's not seat belts attached to them, so... Anyway, all this to say, I can't wait for Mike Flanagan's Silver Bullet coming to Netflix. It's the way that the book is set up, you could easily do it as a series, and I don't think they're above making up material for the series. So I feel like it's a matter of time before that happens, and it probably will fall into Mike Flanagan's lap.
I would love that if you put it in. I don't like the idea of Mike Flanagan doing it, but if you gave it to the right person, the idea of each episode is basically a different protagonist, and you're kind of introduced to a lot of these characters throughout the series, but like you're basically given an episode to like get invested in this person. You fall in love with them. You care about what they care about in life. And then you just watch them get savagely ripped apart by a fucking werewolf in the last 10 minutes of the episode.
These victims have a lot going on in their personal lives too.
Yeah.
Especially that first one where you have this woman who's just been rejected by her fuck buddy, boyfriend. I don't know. She's got a picture of him in her home, and he's like, that ain't my baby. Just remember the good times. And then he leaves, and she's going to kill herself and the kid.
Yeah.
And she's narrating along like, well, suicides don't go to heaven, especially if they're pregnant. And then the werewolf dismantles her.
He's like, I'll help.
Yeah.
Well, so that's one of the things I love about that kill, because that's the second kill in the movie. And first kill is at the top of the film. The werewolf, he knocks a dude's head off. And it's a James Gammon, like very, very popular, like 80s Western character actor. So from the jump, okay, not only is it a werewolf, that's scary enough, but like this thing's strong as shit. Like this is a force to be reckoned with. The second kill, when he comes after this woman, he climbs up to her bedroom window and jumps through the window. So you're not safe indoors. This isn't this isn't like, oh, as long as I don't go out at night and wander through the woods, the werewolf
Right.
won't get me. It's like, nah, the werewolf's walking through your neighborhood at night, and if he sees a light on you in your window, you're up watching fucking Night Court, he's gonna jump in and like rip your throat out. But also that murder is so. This is what I like about when a werewolf is done right. Is a werewolf is not just an animal. Like, if it were just an animal, it would have just bitten her neck and, like, eaten a little bit and left. It would have been quick. But this thing wants to hurt you.
Hmm.
It has the instincts of an animal. It has the speed and the strength and the claws, but it has the hate and the cruelty and the wickedness of a human being. And that is what's truly terrifying about it. Because it's just ripping, it's just sinking its claws into this poor woman's soft flesh and just dragging it down and like ripping her skin before it finally kills her.
As his mom shouts from the floor below,
Mm-hmm.
like,
Yeah,
what's
she's-
going on? What's happening?
Searching for the gun in the chifferobe
Yeah.
or wherever she's got it hid.
I forgot about that first victim that they opened the movie with in the head. I've seen this movie so many times. I have a VHS of it that I picked up many years ago. It's in very good condition. It's my only copy of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I found an archive.org link of basically it's like a movie of the week. And I was surprised to learn it's a Massachusetts TV 38 1988 broadcast of the film. And they left in all the gore, and I was kind of surprised by that. I was like, "Oh, cool, neat." And then we'd get a trailer to Child's Play coming to theaters this Thursday, and it was just this cool little thing. And then they had a Joe Bob style guy, but he was not like putting any effort in. He didn't ghoul it up, he wasn't Svengoolie or Elvira. He was just like a middle-aged white guy in a red and white polo. Like, so this movie came out in 1985. Like, he had no charisma at all, which I appreciated. But I forgot that they do open the movie with the head, and then the suicidal woman is killed, and then you get the burly alcoholic
Yeah.
who's like, all these cripples, they should be euthanized. He's just very
Yeah.
against the handicap. I was cracking up at that.
Was it the
Somehow
one
I
that
forgot about
goes,
it.
the one that goes, you want to get my ass? I'll get your ass. I'll get your ass. I'll get it. Your ass. I'll get your ass. Like, he says that like five times while he's getting his gun ready.
Yeah, he says, if you bust up my pots, I'm gonna bust up your ass.
Yeah,
But
he's
so
just
that's another thing. It's a nice little Stephen King touch is that every other character in this movie is a fucking raging alcoholic.
yeah. I was surprised by the gore, to be honest. I didn't look up what the rating was before I started watching the movie, and I was surprised to see that it was an R. After the first fuck, I was like, wait a second. I thought this was gonna be like a PG or a PG-13 movie. I don't know why. I guess maybe from the poster, I thought it would be like maybe a little bit corny 80s. But then after I think it's one of the kids that says the F word, and then you see those deaths, and I was like, oh shit, okay, they're actually showing gore in this. I was really surprised by that. But yeah, I thought it was very effective, and I really liked whenever you saw the werewolves, like a church scene where everyone starts turning into a werewolf looked really cool, the effects. And then at the end when the priest is turning back into human, I thought those effects look really cool, even though what's his name? De Laurentiis,
Dino
the
De
producer.
Laurentiis.
Yeah, he hated the werewolf apparently, and he asked them to be changed, which is why I think one of the directors quit or something, or
Don
someone.
Coscarelli quit over that.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's what I read.
Oh, yeah, he so Don Coscarelli, he shot because there was dispute over how the werewolf looked. And so Don Coscarelli, he shot all of the non-werewolf scenes. Like he shot all the scenes with no werewolf. And then they still hadn't come to a decision. And so he was like, okay, fuck this. I'm not doing this. I'm out. And then Dan Attias, I guess that's how you pronounce it. He came in And he and Stephen King were firm on the werewolf design. And at that point, it was like, okay, well, we either need to finish the movie as is or just scrap everything we've done. And so Dino caved. And like, I don't think the werewolf looks bad. I mean, his complaint was that it kind of just looks like a black bear, which I kind of get. Like, it's not the best looking werewolf, but I think I think it's still scary looking because its body still looks so human, and it just has like a wolf head, and that's so jarring.
There's also a lot of camera tricks to not show the whole thing until close to the end, right? So that also adds to the creepy factor because you only see like his hands or
Yeah.
mouth or face. I think the first time that we see more of the body is on the bridge scene when Cripple Boy shoots him with the fireworks. But before that, you don't really see the whole monster. You just see, him murdering.
Well, and another ballsy thing that they do is the fourth kill in this movie. He kills a goddamn kid. And
Yes,
like, so
Brady's death, I think,
Yeah.
is the creepiest
yes,
because you just see that bloody kite being dragged back. They just have him staying at the park a little too late. Like, oh yeah, I'll catch up. And then the next thing you know, I think it's Terry O'Quinn,
Terry O'Quinn, yeah,
the stepfather, and also I forget what his character name was on Lost.
John Locke.
Yeah, John Locke dragging back Brady's kite covered in blood. It's very Watchmen, very, the comedian's pin covered in blood. It has that sort of look to it. And yeah, that one has always stuck with me since the first time I watched it. And I love that the course of action from that is then we're going to create a mob and we're going to go out and we're going to find who did this.
Yeah,
And the werewolf just fucking mows down everybody, including Lawrence Tierney
yes,
in this movie, who's great in the limited role with the Peacemaker bat. And how he dies is getting belted with the Peacemaker bat from that werewolf, which is just a very funny visual comedy, I thought.
yeah. Well,
Yeah, there's no plan at all, right? It's just let's go get him. Let's go into the swamp and
yeah.
hopefully he'll show up in front of us and he just starts picking them off.
Well, yeah, you got Lawrence Tierney, you got Michael Mann, veteran Bill Smitrovich as Andy Ferridan, like the malcontent in town. Who else? Who else is in that? The Brady's dad, Kent Broadhurst, is the guy's name. That guy gives such. He's in like two scenes. He gives such like a very sincere and like incredibly unhinged performance as this grieving father who like finds his son who's been mutilated, and torn apart. Like it's so good. That speech he gives in the bar, like right before everybody goes out, in their lynch mob, is like it's like chilling.
Yeah, and it all fails.
Yes.
They flounder so hard in nailing the werewolf. I like the fact that it's kind of out of nowhere with this movie who the werewolf winds up being, because I know during my first handful of watches, or rather my first watch, and then I guess in retrospect, looking back, it's not clear that you're going to wind up with the Everett McGill character being the werewolf. You would think it's either going to be, I don't really know actually what you would anticipate. I guess somebody more relevant to the plot,
Yeah,
to the immediate plot.
They don't treat it like a whodunit really, but there's one kind of a throwaway line where you could kind of see that they're setting it up to make you think it's Uncle Red, because like he's this, he's this loud character. He's kind of lovable, but he's kind of dangerous. Like when we first see him, he's like getting drunk and like he's having fun, like he's being nice, but he's like yelling at his nephew over this card game that they're having. And so you're like, okay, this guy's a loose cannon. But also the mom has that line where she's like, you blow through here once a month and you tell a few jokes, and it's like once a month. What else happens once a month? The full moon. So maybe this guy comes to town once a month to do his killing. But that's really the only kind of line like that.
Yeah, they drop little elements of the town here and there to make you think, okay, this is just normal that we're going to pick up with the preacher character. This isn't anything out of the norm. And then they throw you off a little bit with the nightmare sequence that Hans you mentioned earlier, where they show the members of the church turning into werewolves one after another. It doesn't quite make it obvious that he's the werewolf, but of course that's what we find out shortly thereafter. And it's not just going to be some random town member or somebody who you're never introduced to in the plot of the film. As a matter of fact, we might even open with the preacher when they do the there's like a fair or something, a festival that's occurring, and I believe he's given a speech. So he's very quickly introduced to us, but you don't think anything of it. You kind of disregard it and get right into, okay, well, we have Jane doing the narration, which kind of sounds like Marty died or something.
Yeah.
The way that it ends, it's a little confusing what the purpose of it is. And I'm not sure if we actually need it. I don't mind it. It kind of gives it a nice little homey, hallmarky feel or something, but it fits for what the movie is. When you do get the reveal that it is the preacher and his character transforms into somebody who's sympathetic initially into, oh, no, he's bad. He's really bad. He's evil. He wants to kill this boy. And he's probably going to take a good amount of pleasure in it. It's this very wild turn that happens in the third act.
That's one of the morbid things I don't think we've mentioned, right? The boy starts writing Riddler-like letters to the priest to tell him to kill himself.
It's very 4chan behavior. It's very internet
That's
before
a
the
great
internet.
moment.
It's not you don't really expect it from this sweet boy that's in a wheelchair, and then he's just writing letters to the priest telling him to kill himself because he's a danger to the town.
But yeah, I mean, what else is he supposed to do? He's a kid in a wheelchair, which that's so smart the way they use that in the movie, because it's in the book. But I think part of this movie's like charm and part of its strength is the range that you have, because you have these scenes between Marty and Jane that almost feel kind of like Disney Channel. Like there's like a lot of heart, there's a lot of tenderness. They have the Jay Chataway score, which half the movie is like very like almost kind of saccharine and sweet. And then when the werewolf shows up, it's one of the eeriest fucking scores I've ever heard. It's so effective and scary. But then, you'll have scenes with the two of them, and you're like, okay, this kid's so vulnerable. He's so nice, and he's in a wheelchair. There's literally no one more vulnerable to a werewolf than this kid. How the hell is he going to get out of this?
Did you have something? I thought you were going to say something there, Hans.
No.
I did want to say there's a good amount of tension brought with that bridge scene and him getting caught in the little shed that's there and being approached by the Reverend, and just so happening to get out of it in the nick of time because it's just some landscaper, like there's just a groundskeeper going by on some tractor by chance, and as luck would have it. I like how they also stage the investigation that Jane holds immediately following, where she's collecting cans and uses that as an opportunity to get up close and personal with a lot of the would-be suspects in the town.
And no one gives her anything, not even, they just look at her suspicious.
There's so many rude older men.
Yeah.
Well, it's because they've had like half their friends have been butchered. Everyone's a little out of sorts. But like that's one of the cool things, and in a way they sort of play with the werewolf rules. They sort of tweak the mythos, but they don't make a big deal out of it. Whereas it starts out where it's on the full moon he kills, but then he starts killing when it's not the full moon. And Marty has that line, like Marty and Jane have that line where it's like, well, maybe he's like this all the time now, and just as the moon gets fuller, he becomes more of the monster. And I think that is part of what to where like it's basically taking him over the longer the movie goes. So even during the daylight, the Reverend character, it's the wolf that's really driving him. And that's why you get that scene where he's going after Marty in the car and he's like following him on the bridge, to where it's like it's not just the thing that happens to him when the moon is full. Is like you get the sense that if the movie kept going and if he didn't get shot with the silver bullet, he'd basically just become a killer in the daylight.
No, the silver bullet aspect too. I thought that was. Uh, I was expecting. I'm gonna be honest. I was expecting a lot more corny stuff because Stephen King, right? Usually, when you get a Stephen King movie, a lot of the dialogue between non-main characters is usually pretty horrible.
Well, even
Or
between main characters is pretty
yeah,
atrocious. Like, for example, in The Shining 1997, Jack Torrance has this catchphrase that he loves to drop with his family. He says it about 9 times. He says, "Kissing, kissing, that's what I've been missing."
right.
Oh boy.
But but you don't really get a lot of that here. I feel like Wolfman said, like a lot of the times it kind of feels like a safe kids movie that you would expect in like a Disney Channel type of thing. But then as soon as there's any type of violence, it turns it up to 100 quickly. So I don't know if I agree with the fact that they might remake this just because other than Wolfman, I don't think and because I'm pretty sure you mentioned it on another episode that we had you in here, this movie. I've never heard of it before that time.
Mm.
So it's definitely not a property that I think most people are even familiar with. Um, but also I, I don't know. Like you said, the revival of trying to remake everything Stephen King is probably dead by now with that new Pet Cemetery movie that they just came out was like a prequel, I think, or something like that. And also the fact that yeah, werewolf movies for whatever reason they seem to never get them right unless you try to make like an indie, what's one that came out a couple of years ago, Wolf Cop, right? That was one of those,
Hans, this might be from an episode from a while back, but weren't you? And this may have been a joke. LowRes might have been breaking your balls, but didn't you like that Werewolf by Night movie?
Oh yeah. Well, the 10 minutes of it that, that I saw, yeah, I thought
Oh,
that looked
okay,
cool.
all right. Yeah, I never saw it, so I don't know if it's any good.
I never finished it, but yeah,
Hold on, you didn't finish the 10-minute movie Werewolf by Night?
isn't it like a 50 minutes? I think I only saw like 10 whatever. I
It
saw
was
it.
one of those Marvel Halloween one night only showcases, I think, and I don't know, it managed to kill the concept for me with, even though they were trying to do a stylized thing, it was still all green screen or something like that.
Oh,
I don't know.
yeah.
There was a cheap element to it, like all Disney properties are leaning into these days.
I think I started watching it before we recorded, and then I just never got
You
back
never
to it.
finished it.
The last werewolf movie that I remember seeing its entirety was probably Ginger Snaps, which is this
Oh
Canadian.
wow,
Yeah,
Ginger
I've
Snaps
seen
is
Ginger Snaps.
that's an overlooked one. That is straight up. What is it, like 98, 2003, something like that?
Something like that, yeah. And I think they also came up with 2 sequels for that, if I'm not mistaken.
Ginger
Yeah.
Snaps Back. That was a Showtime 10 p.m. classic. Those Ginger Snaps movies.
Did you guys ever see Late Phases?
Late
That doesn't sound
Phases.
familiar.
Sounds very familiar to me. Was
It's,
that was
Had,
that
Nick D'Amici, the Red Box Robert De Niro? He's the main guy in it.
yes. Yeah, he did Stake Land, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
he's
enjoyed
in
that
it.
movie.
Yeah, it's he's like a blind Vietnam vet, and his son, Ethan Embry, they dug him up, for something. His son puts him in this retirement community, and so he moves in, but like this retirement community, one of the members is a werewolf, and so this blind Vietnam vet has to figure out how to like kill the werewolf, and it's like it's pretty low budget, but it's not bad for what it is.
Late Phases belongs to a string of movies that I think were kicked off with House of the Devil,
Mm-hmm.
where it was essentially maybe about 2009 to 2015 where you had all of these $1 million, $2 million budget horror movies that were released via video on demand when it was this fresh up and coming thing. I think of movies like Starry Eyes
Yeah.
with the lead actress's name is Alex Esso, and she plays Wendy Torrance in Doctor Sleep. That was her fate at the end
Oh,
of the day.
okay.
And there's tons of movies that fall into that criteria of feeling like the next step up from mumblecore, like actual horror fans doing it, but with doing it through the same means that a lot of the mumblecore directors like Joe Swanberg approached probably their later films with and did it well and executed it well. Late Phases, man, I completely forgot about that movie, but I do remember enjoying it quite a bit and thinking it was one of the more low key of that selection, but one of the higher quality ones. And I like the fact that that actor, you just cited his name, plays older in the movie, which is not something you often see. He's probably the same age as Ethan Embry, but he does play
Yeah.
his father in it. You know,
Yeah,
and
probably.
I enjoy when filmmakers and actors embrace the artifice of filmmaking and aren't so concerned with like breaking the veneer with the viewer and just
Yeah.
going, okay, this is a film, this is a piece of art, this is a piece of entertainment, let's just lean into it.
Yeah,
If
it's
you
make believe.
exactly, and I think directors need to be less afraid of that.
No, I agree, and that's why they need to make more fucking werewolf movies.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Cycle of the Werewolf. I think it's a pretty good Stephen King book. Silver Bullet, it's higher tier. Do you think the third act pays off though? Because it goes by pretty quick. I noticed that we get the Silver Bullet 10 minutes from the conclusion, and they wrap things up rapidly.
Well, so a buddy of mine, his one gripe about the movie, and it never occurred to me until he said it, and I wanted to know what you guys thought about it because I think it's interesting. He says the movie needed to end like the silver bullet that kills the werewolf needed to be the motorized wheelchair. Like, and I don't know how you do that. I don't know if you have like Marty like kamikaze it or like jump off at the last minute and like, you know, impale the werewolf somehow. But basically, his wheelchair, the silver bullet, needed to be used.
Yeah, more of a factor with the ending or the way that they kill him.
Yeah,
So that the name is just not.
yeah, instead of a literal silver bullet.
Damn, I do like the idea of him dying like the Green Goblin and
Yeah.
Spider-Man. That would have been
But
that
yeah,
would
no,
have been fun.
If Marty like dies to save Jane, you know, after all the movie of him being kind of like a pest, you know, for her, and yeah, in the end, it's him like sacrificing himself to save her from the werewolf, and it would make that narration make more sense because you're right, like the way she speaks, especially in that end scene where she's like, "I love you too, Marty. Good night." Yeah, it sounds like he is dead. It sounds like he died at some point before the narration began.
Yeah, I don't mind the ending as it currently is. It kind of feels like a slumber party from your youth or something, you know. And you have the Gary Busey character being this reluctant hero trying to kill the werewolf, and I don't even think he does at the end. Who fires the gun?
Marty
It's
does.
Marty does. Okay.
Yeah, he gets thrown against the wall a couple of times, Gary Busey.
Yeah, he does. And I was just thinking the entire time, for someone who doesn't believe it, he sure is dishing out what's probably a lot of money to just go through with this night. Like, he gifts his sister and her husband a trip to New York to go through with this. You know, and I don't know. It's a lot of effort for him to just be like, yeah, why don't we all just go to sleep right when right when someone does see the werewolf.
Yeah, right as the werewolf Kool-Aid man through the door, trying to get them, and then punches him through the wall. I did feel like that was maybe they could have gone harder with that because I feel like they didn't care much about being sensitive with the way that everyone else was killed. So maybe kill one of them at the end would make it a little less family friendly, I guess. But I honestly didn't mind. I did see that one of the illustrations is from the book is Marty shooting the werewolf in the face
Hmm.
with a bullet. So I guess keeping that element from the book works. But now that you mention it, yeah, the bike, I feel like it should have been more of a factor throughout the movie, other than just sharing the name with the movie.
Hmm.
Well, depending on if that future director listens to this show, just like Todd Phillips listened to my suggestion that the Joker sequel should be a musical, end the remake of Silver Bullet that way. That would be a much more satisfying and cooler conclusion. All right, so where does this land for you, Hans? Because obviously, Wolfman, this was your selection. You're speaking of this movie with great adoration. I personally quite enjoy this movie a lot. Where does this fall for you, Hans? You're probably the toughest critic on
No,
this panel here.
I think it was right up my alley, like right what I enjoy about 80s movies, where practical effects, um, creepy and not afraid of showing the killing instead of taking the, corny way out of maybe doing it off camera or doing it in a more comical way. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would, and it's probably because of that, because I thought that I was going to get a safer PG maybe 80s movie, and instead, right from the start, like that, the notion of that was destroyed immediately by the dialogue, the curses, and then the ruthlessness of the deaths that were shown at the beginning. So I enjoyed myself a lot more than I thought I would, honestly. So that when it comes to Stephen King movies, maybe not as good as Dreamcatcher, but I'm kidding. Your favorite Dreamcatcher? No, it's right up there. I'm not a huge fan of him, mostly because of his persona. Like I'm not a huge fan of him as a person, but
Hmm.
I enjoyed his this a lot more than I thought I would. Maybe because I'm used to Wolfman movies being, like Wolfman said, either comedic or just not taken seriously enough to make them creepy. But yeah, this was right up my alley.
I do think that this is one of the shining examples of movies from the 1980s that does jump in and out of let's gear this towards a young audience and let's gear this towards who is probably showing up to the R-rated movie this week or who is escorting them to the R-rated movie this week. And there seemed to be far less apprehension up until about 93 or 94, I want to say, with exposing children to pretty scary stuff in movies and television.
Hmm.
They really seem to go hard in the paint for that up until about the mid 90s. Even Are You Afraid of the Dark and Goosebumps had some pretty
Mm.
disturbing visual stuff or things that would be disturbing for an 8-year-old or 7-year-old. And then everything after that is just fluff. Like adults can't even handle the prospect of a dog dying in the Predator reboot with a Native American girl. So that's where we're at currently. Yeah, and I think this movie's fantastic. I think it's a great 80s movie. One of the best Corey Haim films.
Oh yeah.
I think we can probably all agree on that one. I hope he didn't get raped on this movie.
Well, I mean, he couldn't get away. He was crippled. I don't know.
He didn't feel it. Yeah, he was in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why
so
did
do
Uncle
do you
Red
think...
really send those parents out of town? That's what I'm wondering.
No, not Uncle Red.
No, I
Don't
don't
you
think so.
dare. Don't you dare. Now,
No, clearly he had a taste for the ladies
Oh, yeah.
exclusively. So much so it broke up 3 marriages, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So and then he's waking up with some slut in one scene. She's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm on the phone. Shut up,
Mm-hmm.
bitch." You know. So yeah, no, I think he's as innocent as. But that Everett McGill preacher, clearly
Yeah.
not. Clearly a very nefarious fellow. That guy.
Mm-hmm. Now, where do you think this measures up compared to Lost Boys, Corey Haim's vampire film?
Damn, we might be talking about Lost Boys in the next week or two to cap it under our Halloween deadline here because Hans has
on.
never seen Lost Boys.
Never seen it.
Oh man, it's a hoot.
I love The Lost Boys. I feel privileged to have been featured in a film with Corey Feldman this year.
Oh, no shit.
Yes, his great out of retirement movie, except he's been working like every year, right, Hans? You pulled that up.
Yeah.
I
The
don't know.
Comeback Kid music video, you're gonna see LowRes there dancing
It's
in the
going to be me and
background.
Sean Astin, who also needs a paycheck.
All right.
It's a movie called The 3-2 Pull Down, and they offered me the lead in it at first. And I had to, and they were very generous with the money that they offered, and I had to say no because I've been doing Omega Fish Corp, and yeah, I don't know, but they gave me a little cameo in there instead, and I did not get to see him, but I got to see him act, and Hans has also seen some of his scenes in the movie, so look
Yeah.
forward to that in 2024. Lost Boys wins for me out of the two movies, though. Lost
Yeah.
Boys, it's top 5 1980s teen entertainment.
Yeah, I love it.
Maybe top 3. I don't know. It's really up there.
Well, I think it's a good vampire flick too, like just on its own
Solid.
merits, and a great Schumacher movie.
Oh yeah, yeah. I have to watch his Phantom of the Opera. So I was watching the 1925 Phantom of the Opera last night, and what a snooze! I took a big nap during that. So I don't know. Maybe who's the Phantom in the Schumacher one? Was it Gerard
Butler.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll see how that turns out. I have a feeling that one's going to suck, but we'll see. Did you ever see the Lost Boys sequels, Detective Wolfman?
I think I caught some of that first one that they did, and like I knew going into it wasn't going to be good, but it was so low a level of production that I turned it off.
The one
I
with Angus Sutherland.
Yes, yeah. I couldn't get through it. I couldn't do it to myself.
That
So
was
no,
that was a red choice.
I never dove in.
No, you got to skip that one. And go back for the third one, the Lost
Okay.
Boys. Because then they had a little bit more of a budget, and they were like, "All right, Corey, you want to star? We'll let you star." And it's a Corey Feldman starring Lost Boys sequel where he's like hunting vampire DJs or something, and they bring back Jameson Newlander, who's the other Frog brother.
Yeah.
They did not have Corey Haim at that point because I think he died, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And they just bring him back through clips. He popped up in the second one though at the very end. I think there's a little Easter egg post credits. Hey, here's Corey Haim walking out and talking to, I think it was Corey Feldman, and he's a vampire who has since turned. So
And if they really want to cash in on the like Fangoria fanboy money, there's still time. They need to do a crossover where the Frog Brothers and Rudy from Monster Squad team up and go on a monster hunt.
oh, I thought you were talking about Rudy the football player that Sean Astin
no. Oh,
played.
but that could work too. Maybe all right. Maybe we bring in 2 Rudys. We bring in Rudy the football player, so we got Sean Astin, and yeah, Rudy from Monster Squad.
Perfect. And then you don't even need a Goonies sequel, I think, if you got all them together.
Yeah, I mean it basically serves the same function.
Mhm.
Maybe
Are
the villain could be Will Wheaton, so you could tie in like a Stand By Me kind of angle.
Well, he's a real life villain. I wouldn't.
Yes,
I don't know.
no, that's why it'd be perfect.
That beard. That beard is pretty grotesque. I don't know. It'd be very off-putting to see, even over like 50-year-old Corey Feldman and how he is. I don't know how he did it. He got a spread in Interview magazine this past month where he got an interview and they asked him, what is your fashion style here based on? And he said, Michael Jackson.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it's been that way since like '87.
yeah.
He never moved past that.
Like big surprise. Wow, the white glove and the tight leather and the little hat that's tipped down. Yeah, I couldn't have guessed that. What a great question to ask him.
Well, that's crazy because like a lot of people, most people kind of settle into their style like by the time they're in their like mid to late teens. Like you pretty much. I mean, yeah, fashion will change a little, but you pretty much dress the way you're going to dress the rest of your life. Like if you're preppy at that age, you're going to be preppy the rest of your life. If you're a t-shirt and jeans kind of guy, that's who you're going to be. Poor Corey Feldman and his deranged, like druggy child actor malaise. he was dressing like Michael Jackson at that time, and it stuck. He could never grow out of it.
Is it
Well,
like
that-
or with Michael Jackson?
Oh, who knows?
He knows.
Yeah, that's true. That's why they gave him an interview. He knows where too many of the bodies are buried.
Oh boy. All right. Silver Bullet, I think it's a quality flick. Check it out. It's a top tier werewolf film, especially a late 20th century werewolf film, or really like the last 35 years. It's probably close to the cream of the crop. What outdoes Silver Bullet that succeeds Silver Bullet in terms of time?
When you say outdoes, you mean strictly a werewolf film?
Yes.
Overall, I mean, I think
Are there any in the 90s?
there were a few, but they were like, I mean, they were pretty rough. I don't know if it was 90s or the early aughts, but there was that terrible Wes Craven Cursed movie.
All right.
There was, I mean, yeah, there was the Ginger Snaps movie. That was okay for like a low budget deal. Yeah, there was one, I can't remember the name of it. It was like a PG-13 movie where like there were like these biker werewolves. I don't know. There was the Underworld movies, if you count those. That's vampires and werewolves. But no, I mean, for just like a strict like werewolf horror movie, I think I mean this is one of the best. You know, the first Howling is pretty good. American Werewolf in London is good, but yeah, I mean this one, this is probably my favorite werewolf movie.
Oh yeah, we also had American Werewolf in Paris with
Oh yeah, that dog shit.
Tom Everett Scott in '99 or so. And I think what was it? The other guy from Saved by the Bell. Or am
No,
I
no.
mixing
It
these
was
movies up? I think that was Dead Man on Campus.
Yes, yeah, that's what that was. Yeah, no, yeah, he was hot off That Thing You Do, and then they immediately torpedoed his career with American Werewolf in Paris.
Yeah, it's very slim pickings. I think after that, they've just been.
I'm telling you, man, there's no
Completely
love for
shunned.
werewolves.
I don't know. I think the day of the werewolf has yet to come. That's my bold prediction here because we're already maxed out on zombies. Like AMC is basically the zombie network. It's The Walking Dead nonstop, every single show on there.
Yeah.
We've done the vampire thing, and it's definitely bottomed out at this point. No one really seems interested in it anymore. Frankenstein, that's a little too specific.
Yeah.
They will try that every so often. I know there was like a Danny Boyle play where Johnny Lee Miller and Benedict Cumberbatch.
Benedict Cumberbatch, yeah, yeah.
They swapped off midway through the show playing Frankenstein and the Monster. I thought that was a cool concept. That was the last interesting thing done with Frankenstein. I don't know. There's really nothing else. Invisible People. They haven't gone back to Invisible Man yet, and that was a success.
There's Penny Dreadful that kind of has all of them in there. If you guys caught that, it's like it's such a trashy show.
Yeah.
But like it had moments that I really enjoyed, but it was so uneven because there would be some episodes that were cool and you're like, okay, I think I can hang with this, and then there'd be another where it was just like the most god awful Reddit shit you'd ever seen. But yeah, it was a very, very mixed bag. But nah, man. I think you're right, LowRes. I think the Day of the Werewolf is ahead of us, and it might just be my werewolf movie that gets made.
There you go. What is it? What have we got cooking on your werewolf movie?
Oh, I can't really go into it without like putting my identity at risk. But I wrote one. It exists, but that's about as far as it's gone.
Okay, so we'll keep our eyes peeled for
Keep your eyes peeled.
the anonymous Detective Wolfman movie to come. We'll just have to sniff it out, I guess. Awesome. Well, I do think if anything's going to kick it off in the immediate future, it'll probably be that if they make that Derek Cianfrance, Ryan Gosling, especially after Barbie now, where he's really hot, that's gonna do it. That's gonna set it over the edge. People are gonna start going, can we make a wolf? Is that public domain? The Wolfman? And I think it is public domain. It could be public domain. I'd have
probably
to look into
at
it.
this point.
I mean, Batman's going to be public domain in the next 10 years or so. So I would have to imagine Wolfman at this point is public. Is it? It has to be based on a novel. Hans, let's do a quick search on this
Just
real
no.
quick. No.
No, the
Nope.
the Wolfman's just a Universal Monsters movie.
Wow. Okay. So that's the one that they have to their name. Everything else, and they're just sitting on it.
Mhm.
That's remarkable.
I wish we could have, if we had gotten a Coppola Wolfman movie when he did Dracula and produced Frankenstein, if we'd gotten a little trilogy then, that could have been good. That could have been incredible. But alas, not in this world.
Alas, indeed. That Frankenstein movie was the most boring thing I ever watched as a child. I thought,
man, I
oh
loved
man, I think I was like 6 years old when I watched that, and I was like, Frankenstein and Robert De Niro is gonna be Frankenstein. Okay, let's sign up for this. And I got it on pay-per-view, and man, that was rough going for a child. I was like, there's nothing scary or cool about this at all.
Have you watched it since you've become a man?
No, I haven't. I would have to go back to it and
Yeah, you
and
should
see if
revisit it.
it's
Let me know what you think.
any good. All right, I'll have to do that. All right, we're gonna close out the show on that note. Detective Wolfman, thank you for coming back on the program. I think did you come on earlier this year, or is this the first time this year?
I think this is my first time this year. It's my third appearance, not counting when we got everybody together for Pope of Greenwich Village.
That's right. We did Nope.
Yeah.
And what was the other movie we did?
We did The Keep before that.
Nope and The Keep. That's right. Okay. And I just saw Ferrari, and Ferrari's terrific. Ferrari has a really stunning third act
Okay.
twist that I did not expect at all, which was gruesome. And the whole theater was like, what? What is happening? So I don't know. I don't know if you know anything about the history of Ferrari, but don't look into it if you want to go watch that movie.
No, I'll just see the movie.
Okay. All right. Well, that invitation is legitimate for Dr. Sleep. I don't know if we might. I feel like that would be very appropriate to do for 300, Hans. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm down.
All
I'm
right.
watching that piece of shit.
All right, Wolfman, if you want to come on for the next one for episode
Yeah.
300, it's Dr. Sleep. We're doing it.
Give me a day and a time.
All right. It'll either be this week or it'll be next week.
All
And
right,
we'll figure it out.
I know I'm recording with Glenn from Rare Candy on Thursday, but other than that, I'm pretty wide open.
Nice. Okay. All right. I'm heading to Massachusetts Friday, so I don't know if Thursday's even going to be viable for me. I'm shooting a little more of Omega Fish Corp that day, so it's a tricky day anyhow. That's probably
Right
off.
on.
So we'll figure it out. We'll get that in the can and look forward to that. Episode 300, Dr. Sleep again. Okay. All right, everybody. That has been Movies for this week. Thank you for listening.